But a time to remember and honor all the innocent people who lost their lives on that horrible day. You've been sharing your reactions all day to the news that Osama Bin Laden was killed by U.S. forces. Emotions are certainly running the gamut. 1 minute you can feel elation, as we have seen, people celebrating. The next, fear about, okay, this has happened. Now I fear anxiety. What could happen next? Dr. Paula Bloom is a clinical psychologist and helps her patients deal with processing these conflicting emotions. And boy, is this certainly a day of conflicting emotions. We have seen people celebrating in the streets outside of the White House, chanting USA, USA. We have also heard of people being sad about it, a solemn day. Why do you think that the emotions are so conflicting today?
I mean, it's just, we as human beings are very complex. And one of the things that happens is that people deal with things in different ways. When we're kids, we grow up believing that good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. And when September 11th happened, that really shook people up because that made no sense. So here we are, fast forward almost 10 years later, and here's this bad guy who something bad happened to him. And so I think people who are celebrating, it's like a return to this, oh, phew, this belief that, okay, this makes sense. 9/11 didn't make sense. This makes sense.
Yeah, they want to compartmentalize what has happened. We heard from a woman, a lot of people today lost loved ones during 9/11. This woman lost her husband at Ground Zero, Cantor Fitzgerald, at the World Trade Center. And she said today she was surprised by her emotions. She said, I didn't know I could feel this way, and now I feel like I can put one foot in front of the other. How significant is justice in this, in moving ahead?
It just depends on the person. There are people who made a decision to move forward because they didn't have control over whether Osama Bin Laden got caught, right, and killed. So they made a decision to move forward because if they waited for this to happen to feel relief, they could have waited their whole lives. And then there are people who are surprised by how much closure they feel in this situation. It depends on the person. But I do agree with the lady who was talking, that the clip that we saw, about it not being a day for celebration, it being a day to remember and honor and move forward.
How therapeutic, Dr. Bloom, is Facebook and Twitter? On my Facebook page today, I'm Rochelle, she's been talking about it. Glenn writes in, yes, justice has been served. People want to speak out. They want to be heard.
I was on Facebook till 2:30 in the morning yesterday,
wow.
And it was really important for me to feel part of the community. This event happened to us all, and this, of course, is happening to us all again. There's something so powerful about being in community.
Do you believe in closure? Is it an overused term, or does it exist?
I think that often people will use the excuse of, I need closure to move forward. I don't believe you need closure to move forward. It's a lovely thing. It's like after a breakup, people feel that, oh, I can't move on if I don't have closure. Sometimes having a sense of justice and like, wow, all is right in the world can be very helpful. But let's not pretend that you need closure in order to move forward in your life, because then you're way too dependent on things you don't have control over.
We talked about the tornadoes that have recently hit the southern area. Hundreds of people died in that at the hands of nature opposed to the hands of man. Talk about that. We mentioned it during the commercial break.
It's a really powerful thing. The studies show that trauma related to an act of God, yes, it's horrible, but people tend to fare better psychologically than sort of trauma, for example, with war, combat-related problems. Because there's something about, okay, we can acknowledge that nobody had any power or control when there comes a tornado, but this violates our whole sense of safety about humanity and good versus evil, the things that people have been struggling with for thousands of years. It's much harder to deal with trauma at the hands of a human being.
And I think a lot of people who lost loved ones on 9/11 have been stagnant. And finally, maybe someone is answering for what they have done, Osama Bin Laden.
Yeah, it's just, again, it's one of these things, it's a good thing to have this, but you can't wait in your life when you have tragedy. You have to take some control, because ultimately you need something to counteract the powerlessness when you had no control over what happened to your loved ones.
Well said, Dr. Paula Bloom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.